The day passed slowly, as if time itself was reluctant to move from its slow rhythm. Today, like yesterday, I stepped back into the rice fields that were so familiar to my feet and my eyes. The sky hung low, the same sky, with clouds that may have changed shape but still carried the same color, calm gray, as if secretly holding a story. My steps along the rice field embankments were still wet with dew and the remains of last night's rain. In the distance, the silhouette of the mountains loomed faintly, becoming a silent backdrop for the expanse of young green rice fields. The rice plants did not look any different from yesterday. Still standing fragile in rows, their stems thin and their leaves showing no signs of aging. As if time was reluctant to touch them, leaving them there at the same age, like a scene that was replayed without change. I continued my snail hunt today, with a small basket hanging from my waist and my hands to part with the mud that holds secrets. There were not many sounds to accompany me, only the chirps of insects from the bushes and the occasional sigh of wind passing through the weeds. The snails, small creatures with homes on their backs, seemed to take shelter in the mud, slippery and calm. There was no hurry in this rice field. Even the hunt became a kind of meditation, slow motion, full of patience, full of caution. In between bending and feeling the mud, my gaze occasionally rose to look at the rice again. I could not be sure why they looked so the same. Was it time that had stopped, or was I the one trapped in the repetition of days? This rice field, this land, had its own way of hiding time. Even the sun seemed to shine with the same light, from the same angle. Snail hunting is not just about the results. It is a kind of silent journey, between me, the land, and unhurried time. And in the silence of this rice field, I hear small sounds, the rustle of mud, the gurgling of water, and the breath of memories that never really disappear. This rice field has not changed much, and perhaps it does not need to. Because that is precisely where its comfort lies, eternity in everyday life. Just yesterday morning I set foot in this rice field, walking along its narrow, slippery embankments, chasing snails scattered between the rice stalks. I still remember clearly how the sunlight shone slowly from behind the fog, forming soft shadows on the calm water surface. I thought I had brought enough home yesterday. My basket was full, my hands were dirty with mud, and my shoulders were sore from constantly bending over. But this morning, when I returned, the view was almost unchanged. The snails were still visible everywhere, as if I had never touched them yesterday. I stood for a moment on the edge of the embankment, looking at the expanse of green. The rice was still young, still as fragile and tiny as before, showing almost no change. But what disturbed me was the presence of the snails that never disappeared. They stayed where they were, attached to the rice stalks, settling in the mud, covered in a thin layer of slime that glistened in the morning light. Had they re-emerged from a deeper hiding place? Or had I only caught a small part of the hidden colony? My steps began to retrace yesterday's path, passing familiar tracks, puddles that reflected the sky and my own shadow. Every step I took felt heavy, not because I was tired, but because of the small questions that arose in my head. This rice field seemed to have its own way of continuing to give, continuing to hide, and continuing to challenge. My right hand was busy groping the mud again, pulling one by one the snails from their hiding places, putting them in the basket hanging from my waist. Before I knew it, my basket was heavy again. And that made me ponder. Could it be that these snails never really left? Or maybe, nature has its own way of balancing every disturbance that humans make. Every snail I take might be replaced with a new one. As if the soil, water, and time work together to maintain the continuity of this cycle. The wind blew softly, bringing the rustling sound of rice leaves swaying lightly. The sound was not loud, but enough to fill the silence that accompanied me this morning. There was no sound of machines, no human voices, only nature and I listening to each other silently. And again I realized, this rice field is not just a field where I look for snails. It is also a space for reflection, a place where everything that is invisible becomes felt. This is where time runs at its own rhythm, unhurried, unpretending. And those snails, no matter how many there are, may be just small fragments of a big story that nature has not finished writing. As my footsteps return to tread the wet rice field embankments, there is a kind of calm that always greets me here, in this vast expanse of silence and peace. Every morning I come with the same intention, to hunt for snails, to seek sustenance from the land that is never stingy in giving. This rice field, although it has no sound, always greets me in its own way. The smell of wet mud, the rustle of rice leaves blown by the wind, and the refraction of morning sunlight reflecting off the surface of the water make everything feel familiar and calming. Even though my body is tired from constantly bending over, walking through the mud while groping for hiding snails, no complaints arise from my heart. On the contrary, there is a sense of satisfaction that grows every time I catch the snails one by one and put them in the basket. Not many people know that this simple job has great value for me. It's not just about filling my stomach or collecting money, but also about how I become one with nature, understand its rhythm, and learn to be patient from every slow but sure movement. The snails are never in a hurry, they are quiet and patient in the mud, and from there I learned that even in silence, sustenance still comes to those who are serious about looking for it. Sometimes, when the sun begins to rise and sweat flows from my forehead to my neck, I pause for a moment, looking at the sky whose blue is often not perfect. There are clouds, there are birds flying high, and far away, the sound of chickens calling out to each other from the settlement. In that pause, I feel that life is simple. It doesn't take much to feel enough. Enough with this rice field, with a basket that is slowly filling up, and with a heart that remains grateful even though the body is tired. Tiredness is indeed unavoidable, but the joy is much greater. Because every snail I bring home is not only the result of my hard work, but also a symbol of loyalty and love for the work I have been doing for a long time. In this rice field, I find myself, a simple person, but full of enthusiasm living day by day. And tomorrow morning, when the dew still hangs on the tips of the rice leaves, I know I will come back here again. Not because I am forced to, but because my heart has become one with this land, with its water, with its sky, and with all the calming silence in it.